and welcome back to my channel. And I was gonna start this off with saying and welcome to some of the worst lighting that I've ever had to deal with, but it's actually not looking nearly as bad as I thought it did in the test run. So we are thanking baby Jesus for that. And today we are going into a video that I did not manage to get filmed before. I am visiting Virginia right now for a little bit of a break, and that is talking about the worst, most underwhelming makeup that I have experienced and used and bought in 2020. Obviously, this shiz is disgustingly, absolutely, entirely very experience specific. It is subjective. And if I end up talking about something that you absolutely love, that is your end all be all bomb diggity shiznit, that is absolutely fan-tucking-fastic. You keep doing you, boo-boo. I'm just talking about the things that I had purchased and I had used, things that I feel higher expectations for. What I do like is actually this video is going to be a more underwhelming products rather than being the worst, because even though I wasn't necessarily the best with my low buy, I was a lot better than I had been. So there is not the same breadth, not the same amount of products that I tried. So I feel like there was less room for error and purchasing bad things. But it's just, in my opinion, it is very, very subjective. So we're just gonna go on in and we're gonna talk about these things that, for one reason or another, I found personally to be underwhelming for me in the year of 2020. Okay, let's start off with the items that I actually have on hand, things that I still own that I haven't decluttered or sold or whatever. And like I said, a lot of these products, mostly eyeshadow palettes, aren't necessarily absolutely god-awful. They are just products that really just missed the mark for me to make them really amazing, whether it had to do with color story, quality, or things like that. So some of the stuff I still have in my collection because I'm still using it, even though it's only kind of so-so. Other stuff in here you are going to see in my 2021 declutter. So let's start off with one that will be in the 2021 declutter. This is the Melt Cosmetics Millennial Pinks palette. I have talked mad shiz about this palette ever since it's been released. Got the nice, pretty millennial pink packaging. You've got kind of an okay, interesting, unique color story. And y'all know, well, if you don't know then, you know now, that I don't like this. I do not F with this. This is Melt Cosmetics when they get their formula wrong. As you look at it and I'm like, okay, all right, I anti-hauled it and I was like, it's kind of looking. And then I was thinking, well, I want to spend some money, so I might as well spend it on something I'm gonna get a review out of. And it's just subpar. Strange, odd, disjointed, oddly curated color story aside, if the formulation be the bomb diggity shiznit, I can get behind a weird color story, or even just like a more formula is what is the most important to me. And this was just really not good. Mattes were super, super powdery. Like, we're talking like Melt Cosmetics is powdery, like powdery to the max. Like, do not look at these eyeshadows wrong. Do not touch them wrong. Do not breathe wrong around them. Because if you do, they are going to create a massive amount of kick up and fallout. And they're also going to blend like absolute shiz. And then when you try to blend the deeper color to get gradation, it's just going to be like, nope. Not happening. It does not compute. And then when you try to take a shimmer, you got this moon glow, which you're like, oh yeah. And then you got this pink noise, which you're like, oh yeah, nothing. Just a little schwitz of something on your finger when you swatch it. Super difficult to get on a brush. Just overall, there was little to no redeeming qualities about this palette. It just absolutely sucked. And I don't think, I could be wrong, I have not viewed the whole entire breadth of YouTube beauty content. But in my small little circle of the YouTube world, I have not heard people saying, oh yeah, the Melt Cosmetics Millennial Pinks palette was my favorite of 2020. It's my end all be all, holy grail. I use it every day. I just don't hear that. I'm probably gonna F with it just a few times more before I completely get rid of it, but it is on the way out. Might as well talk about one that I had crazy, super high expectations for. I saw this shiz and I was like, yes, that is me. That is mine. That is going to rock my world. And I mean, it did end up rocking my world, but not in a good way. We have the Colored Rain Juicy Boost palette. Now, y'all know that I'm a fan of the Colored Rain Vivid Pigments palette. I love it. One of my favorite bright, colorful palettes. And so when they showed me this shiz, I was like, oh, F me up. I was thinking how pretty this was gonna be on its own, how pretty it was gonna be with the Vivid Pigments palette. I had all kinds of plans for this bad boy right here. But as a lot of you probably know, I will leave it linked down below. We tried it on camera. Didn't go well. Was one of the worst try-ons I have ever had in the history of my channel. This stuff just didn't want to work. There was no gradation. They were super powdery. They didn't blend well. The three shimmers that you get are all kinds of chunk Fallout City. Like, these shimmers are the way that Melt Cosmetics shimmers are when they're not done well. They're just an absolute agonizing pain to work with. Now, I hadn't experienced Colored Rain shimmers before, but I had experienced their bright mattes. I'd experienced their pigments. So I figured I knew what I was getting into when I purchased this thing, and it was one big, giant, flaming train wreck. Wasn't any better when I tried it off camera. It just, for the amount you pay for this palette, which is above $50, I would expect, maybe, even just higher quality than what I experienced with using this. That was just like, this sucks. Some of this stuff is like, oh, it's a bit underwhelming. Millennial Pinks and this, they just suck. Don't buy them. I thought it was me. I thought I sucked at makeup, and maybe I do still suck at makeup, but there are other creators that I know and love who also struggled with this. And from Colored Rain, who usually has a pretty good hold on their quality control, this was just probably one of the biggest disappointments for me in releases in 2020. I just wanted to love it. The aesthetic was there, the colors were there, the whole whatever was there. But if you can't blend it, and if the shadow just piffs off your lid, then color story, whatever. Another one of probably the biggest disappointments of 2020 for me, ColourPop. A brand that I have discussed multiple times on this channel and will probably continue to discuss as long as they continue to make absolutely continuous pointless releases. Which we know that's what they're gonna do because they've been doing it and no one telling them to stop, and they just like, I just did like my anti-hauls and all like my whatevers, and I'm like, we're releasing ColourPop stuff already again? No, stop! And I've been pretty good about, picking and choosing between what ColourPop things I wanted to get, and one of the things I got was the palette bundle of the Thai Cloud Dye something collection. And so you have these three palettes and you're like, okay, purpley, pinky, bluey. And then we got this one, which is kind of orangey and bluey and greeny. And then this one, which is orangey and rosy and pinky. And out of all of them, this one is the best. This one is the Miss Bliss. This one I have actually pulled for a couple of times for the Palo Santo shade, the Chakra to me. The shimmers in here don't touch the glitter. And the mattes are pretty great, though they do give us ones that are chock full of shimmy shininess, and they do seem to be a bit more powdery than the typical ColourPop formula. So when I buy a palette that is this size, this componentry from ColourPop, I'm thinking, okay, monochromatic palettes, I have 99.999% of those, and I love 99.999% of the ones I have. So I don't know if I had high expectations for these. I at least had a certain standard that I was kind of expecting them to be held to. And let's just say they did not take the cake. I mean, it's just kind of sad. Now, I understand that these are lighter, these are pastels, but I feel like that's not an excuse for an inconsistent formula, because other companies can do pastels, but every time I've tried pastels from ColourPop, it has not ended well. I am sad because these 4 shades right here are my absolute shiz. This shade right here is exactly like the green you get in Just My Luck. It is the exact same shade. They've named it something different. Does not perform exactly like that shade. So we've got inconsistency. Then this one here, it's just a bunch of like light, soft shades that they already had in other of their monochromatic palettes, and they're like, well, let's just throw them together and mix them up a little bit and make something just a little bit different. But for some reason, the quality was just a miss. I'm not a depotting person, you all know that, but I feel like for these ones, I'm probably just gonna end up depotting the colors that I like and putting them in my ColourPop single shadow palettes, because on a whole, these just underperformed on pretty much every level. It was just like, you look at it in the collection, you're like, okay, yeah, sure, it was thought out, but I don't think it really was. It was just very flat. I got caught up in the, oh, it's new ColourPop. I like pastellies. I like colors. And it's just, it was sad, pitiful, sad, underwhelming. We'll break it up just a little bit and talk about a product that is like, like I said, it's that middle ground. It's missing that one component that would take it to the next level. Natasha Denona, we discussed her, we discussed the Love palette of this in my Best of Beauty. We talked about her $65 palettes and my Best of Eyeshadow palettes for 2020. And when she released her bronze palette, we also released the Bronze Face Glow palette, which I was like, yeah, clearly not created for my pasty complexion. But was that going to stop me from buying this thing anything, reviewing it, and seeing it as a multi-use product? Absolutely not. And some of these things I do like. The Blush and Glow right here is a very, very unique sort of like, and dried up. Maybe I just need to warm it up. No. Well, it could potentially be dried up. That was one of the aspects of the palette that I liked, so that's a little bit disappointing. Maybe I need to add something to it. But this palette was just a little bit weird. It introduced some new formulas like this Bounce Cream Glow and Blush, like this one. It was just a really weird texture to work with. It didn't come off really nicely on your brush. This one here, which is one of the reasons I actually enjoyed the palette. Now it's like really like crazy hard pan. I don't know if that's because it's dried up, because I have had the bronze one, the tan one, the Love one, and the original one, and none of the products in there have dried out or come into this texture before. And then we have the Super Glow Nude, really pretty. If you've got a deep complexion, it's a nice kind of light faint highlighter. The Super Glow Bronze, also again, a really nice formula. I've used this over top blushes to kind of give it some dimension. But on a whole, the entirety of the palette just wasn't worth it, especially in comparison to the super high quality of the Love palette and the blush one and the tan one. I have all 3 of those and I love all of them, which is why I bought this one, because typically it's a formula that I can rely on. And now I'm really bummed about the blush, like whatever, and I have to decide, like, maybe I can add some oil to it. Maybe I can do something to revive it, but that just kind of puts another nail in the coffin of this product for me. It just was not up to par for Natasha Denona's quality control, especially compared to the other things that we've tried about this before. And I believe this is not a limited edition product. This was a permanent addition to her line. So when you're making permanent additions to things, it's like, maybe you should formulate them a little bit more consistently. We might as well talk about at least one of the most underwhelming releases of 2020. I have talked mad shiz about this palette. It has showed up in many different videos on my channel and probably videos you're gonna see after this because it just was so just flat. Just sad. Jeffree Star Cosmetics, the Bloodlust palette. We got this beautiful, well, beautiful. You got some packaging that's time and whatever was clearly spent into making this shiz. Then you open it up and they had the audacity to put this in it. Looking at it now, it's honestly worse than I remember it being. Like, it's okay. This is definitely one of those palettes that just, it's missing that something. The quality, relatively good. Don't think it's quite up to par with the blood sugar formula. It's a little bit different. You know, we've got a nice selection of mattes, you know, nice shimmers. That ratio is good. These two shades right here, which are that new super impactful high shimmer formula, those are really nice. We've got a god-awful black here with all kinds of purpley pinky shimmer in it that just schwitzes everywhere. We have a random red, which it's okay. We got this, you know, it's just okay. For it being entitled Bloodlust, and for what he was implying that he was going to be giving us, this was just sort of a non sequitur. It was very anticlimactic when you think about how it was hyped and how it was being presented and all this rich and decadent and glorious and deliciousness, and then we get we got a stupid white one. I understand you use that shiz for blending out all kinds of whatever, but when you have a palette that's already leaning more pasty than decadent, I feel the matte white doesn't help it in any way. You know, the purples in here, I like. I don't reach for this when I'm thinking, oh, I want to do purple. I reach for, let's see here. I've got Give Me Glow. I've got ColourPop. I've got BH Cosmetics. I've got Huda Beauty. I've got Natasha Denona. I've got Viseart. I have so many other purples that I know and love and that have a greater depth of color that I just don't think about using this palette. And I probably should to get use out of it. I should pull it out and be like, okay, all right, well, let's mix this up together and get some use out of these things because they're nice. You know, it's nice quality, but you know, just looking at it on a whole, it's definitely one of the most underwhelming palettes he's ever released. It's just not up to par with what we've seen him do before. It just was kind of just there. I wanted more. The next palette I'm going to talk about is definitely one that is subjective. This is not a bad palette by any means, but just comparatively to other things that have been released and sort of the timing of it, it just, like I said, it just was flat. It fell on deaf ears. And that is the Amrezy palette from Anastasia. This, you know, okay, all right, let me preface this. This is not a bad palette. I need to pull this out and use it more because it does have very beautiful colors in it. A lot of the shimmers are very stunning. I'm not happy about the pressed glitter situation, but I purchased it, so I only have myself to blame. So it's not a bad palette, but this came on the heels of Anastasia in 2019, basically releasing, I think they released like 8 or something palettes in that year, and the consumers were not really feeling it. We were getting a little bit overwhelmed, a little bit oversaturated, a little bit just over Anastasia releasing a palette every other month, not giving palettes they released the time to breathe. They had 2 collaborations or maybe 3 in 1 year. We had Alyssa Edwards, we had Jackie Aina, we had the Carly Bible, then we had the Amrezy just going into 2020, and it kind of didn't set the best tone for the brand with moving forward. It's okay, but there isn't anything that really makes it special or stand out compared to other palettes that Anastasia have released and other palettes that were being released at this time. It's just okay. It's not an amazing palette. It isn't super revolutionary. It doesn't really stand out against anything else. It's just kind of there. Now, Anastasia has released considerably less in 2020, although I don't think they were even going for quality over quantity in that year. They've just kind of fallen a little flat overall for me. Like, it used to be Anastasia would release a palette. I mean, I've been trying to break myself of that for I don't know how long, but they would release a palette and I'd be like, well, gotta get it, gotta review it. Whereas I feel if this palette had been released in 2020, would have been a better time, but I probably would have passed on it because I've got a little bit more self-awareness even now than I did then. Not a bad palette. I'm sure a lot of people love it. I need to pull it out and use it more, but it's just not amazing. It isn't anything that's any better than stuff that has already been released and done. As far as my low buy was going pretty well. 2020 was the year that I tried way too many different things from ColourPop and I found some duds. ColourPop, I feel, with as much as they have on the market right now, as many products as they have on their site, there is a lot more room for error with them and a lot more room for things to kind of just get passed over in the quality control area. And two palettes that I tried, two palettes that I anti-hauled and bought anyway because I am so dumb. We have the Wild Nothing. This was like the Cactus collection. I don't know what I was on. I don't know what I was toking or what happened, but I went on to ColourPop and was like, wow, those shades are so pretty. I could do some nifty shiz with that. And then we have the Garden Variety, which I most definitely also anti-hauled. And I was like, ooh, look at that shiz. Look at that pretty green shimmer. Look at that pretty purple shimmer. Look at that pretty peachy shimmer. I could do something with this. And I think what ColourPop had done is they had them in like a bundle. And so I was like, oh yeah. Oh yeah, I could totally do that. The quality is okay. Once again, they're not awful, terrible. This is the worst eyeshadow I've ever used in my life. But they're also not something that really gave me a lot of joy when I used them on my face. These products have been sitting here in Virginia while I've been in Tennessee, so I'm probably going to pull them out and give them like another try or two, and then we'll see at decluttering time whether they're worth holding on to and if they bring me any sort of joy when doing my makeup. I don't think I would be so intent on trying to depot any of these shades because with the plastic ones, they just kind of pop out where these I would have to get very DIY with trying to get them out of this cardboard. That is not really something I'm feeling for me in 2021, so we'll just have to see. But all in all, these were just very underwhelming, and this is honestly a really big reason as to why, even when ColourPop releases something like they did 2 all matte palettes, and I was like, those are pretty. But after trying these, I've been less interested, less inclined to purchase random ColourPop palettes that just show up because I'm afraid they're gonna have poor, inconsistent quality like this rather than having the monochromatic palettes they have in these singles. The quality was just different on this, and after that I haven't wanted to test those waters again. Then the last things that I have in my possession are the Huda Beauty Haze palettes. I think I anti-hauled these. I know I talked about them in some kind of video and then I bought them anyway, like I said, because I'm dumb. Oh, I'll get a review out of it. And they did look really stinking pretty. This is the Purple Haze one, you know. It's got these nice pretty shimmers, these nice mattes. Then there was this sand one, which I feel like was the most like if you already have like her new nude palette or the nude version she did of this, I feel like you really wouldn't need this, but it was pretty. It was nice. And then we had the khaki one, which I was like, F me up. Because it had these beautiful, rich, decadent tones. It's got this shimmer here that's like a rose gold with like little greeny reflex. And then this one's like a pink with like, I was feeling it. And I also thought that they would go like really well. I was just like, you know what? Like they would go they would play so nicely together. And Huda Beauty, I love some of these like 9pan palettes. I've got the jewel toned ones, which I absolutely love. I've got the coral ones. I've got the neon ones, you know, and then she did the nude ones and they were okay. I returned them. And these were kind of more of the same in that avenue where they just weren't like, I could not understand. I do have a new primer that I really like, eye primer for my eyes. So I'll probably pull these out one or twice more times to really see if they're just, you know, if it was a reasoning behind my face. But like they were just, there's this one color in here. I think it was in this khaki one. Yeah, this one right here. I dug so far into this one. Like Kick Up was absolutely absurd on this thing. It was not fun. And I'm just like, why when it comes to these, is it just so inconsistent? I don't understand how you can formulate eyeshadows in your Rose Gold Remastered, in your Desert Dusk, you know, in the bright ones, in the neon ones. And then you come out with these and it's like a formula I've never tried before. I would start with one color and we'd be good. We'd be like, okay, all right, this is going to be pretty. I'm going to be beautiful. I'm going to be amazing. And then you go to the next color and that's when your eye said, I'm done. I can't do this. I'm not having no more than one color up on this eyelid. And I know with this one, I got that little spot, but it was even like with this eye and everywhere else. And it wasn't just that little spot. It's like the little spot had transferred to my whole eyelid and my whole eyelid was just like, no. An exercise in absolute frustration. I am going to try them again now that I have that eye primer that works really well for me. It's the Milani one. So all y'all who recommend that to me, thank you very much. But these are just, I mean, you're sitting here. This is the thing that kills me. Like you're sitting here and you're looking at like basically $90 right here. And I'm like, this is not $90 eyeshadow quality. Like I said, I'm going to try them again. I'm going to give them one or two more times and we'll have to see, but I cannot live through what I lived through with trying to get these to work. I wiped and removed my eyeshadow. I was going to try to review them and I was just like, screw it. No, they're just going to be in a hits and misses. I do not have it in me to review these. I've actually only got two things on here that I don't have with me, one of which being the BH Makeup Revolution and Alexis Stone palette. I had really high hopes for this because it was all kinds of bright. It had an absolutely beautiful, gorgeous gradation to it on each of those rows and colors. It was fairly affordable. I was really looking forward to having this like nice, affordable, big brights palette because I think I bought this around the same time that I did the Viseart Grand Pro 3, which is probably my end-all be-all, is my end-all be-all holy grail bright colored matte palette. And I was gonna do like a comparison, you know, could you buy the Alexis Stone one, you know, and kind of get the same results. And some of the shadows were good. I was really torn about decluttering it. I believe I have already decluttered it because some of the shades were beautiful and blended gorgeously, but the amount of fallout with this palette was absolutely disgusting. I mean, you do the thing, right? And you kick it up on the thing and you do that and just like half of the pigment would fall down on your cheeks anyway. It was awful, especially for like the purples. I remember the grays and the blacks. It was so difficult. You know, I could set my under eye with like half a thing of setting powder and then to be like, oh, I'll just catch the fallout. No. This was not a palette to use if you are someone who does your base makeup first. And I'm not someone who does my base makeup first. And it was still just like, there was just so much fallout pigment. It was just, it was agonizing. It was so terrible. I was just like, you know, some of the colors are nice. Some of the blending was really nice. But when I think about it and I'm like, Soraya, you have so many of those colors already, and you have so many of those colors already that don't give you the same kind of agita that this palette does with all the fallout. So get rid of it. Get rid of it. Don't sit here and force yourself to work through something when you have other things that you love more. I was so torn though because I wanted it to work. It was so pretty. It had great colors and it had some unique colors. I was like, I do not have a matte that is that particular color. And it was things like that that was kind of holding me on, keeping me wanting to keep it. But I was just like, you're not going to reach for it because of the headache it gives you. So just cut the cord, cut out the middleman, and let it go now. Then we'll end on one that was definitely underwhelming for the price, but one that I still have in my collection, that I will continue to have in my collection, and that I will use. But it was not one that I recommended people to go out and buy, and that is the Natasha Denona $129 Trio-Chrome palette. I saw this and it made me very excited. I first saw it and I thought it was going to be the $65 palette. Y'all know how I feel about those. Then I found out it was going to be $129 and I was like, what do I do? I had recently started an OnlyFans and it was a payment period and the Sephora 20% off sale was happening. So I waited for that. I used my OnlyFans money because that was extra money that wasn't going towards bills. And I bought it to review it and it's okay. Now, it feels like a more significant level of it's okay because when you are charging $129 for some eyeshadow, I would expect quality that is at least a little bit more than it's okay. Now, the shimmer, the Trio-Chrome, the little chromium, whatever shades, the 3 of those you got in the palette, absolutely stunning. That green one is now one of my absolute favorite green shimmer shades. But, like, the mattes were like, okay, you know, it was just not something that met my expectations and then exceeded them like her $65 palettes were. Like if this had been at a $65 price point, we would be having a little bit of a different discussion. But because it was under that umbrella of being so expensive, I just couldn't give it as many passes as if it had been less pricey. It was $130. Let's just call it like it is. $130 is a lot of, $65 is a lot of money. And when you're a company that has these $65 palettes that are formulated so nicely across the board, and then you put these kind of subpar eyeshadows in $129 palettes, I just don't understand. Like if the mattes had been the same sort of quality in the Trio-Chrome palette as they were in, say, the Glam, in the Bronze, in the Love, in the Sunrise, you know, if it had been that standard, which is $65, I would have been more okay, but I could tell that they just weren't the same. They weren't as smooth. They weren't as seamless to work with. Like, I love the $65 palettes because they are a joy to work with. They are a pleasure. They are no fuss. I pull those palettes out and I know 9.9 times out of 10, I'm going to enjoy the look that I come out with and it's going to work with me. The Natasha Denona Trio-Chrome palette was just, you know, I'm going to use it. I have it. I have used it in conjunction with other palettes and I really enjoy the looks that I've come up with, but on its own, for $129, it is absolutely not worth the money. I would recommend wait for this shiz to go on sale. If it hits $65, sure, pull the trigger, but not at $129. That was not the best quality I have ever experienced from them. For that price point, come on, it's embarrassing. All right, all y'all, that is what I have for the worst, most underwhelming makeup for me in 2020. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I apologize if I seemed a little bit off. It's been a while since I filmed, so I haven't really hit my groove yet. I would love to hear what y'all have to say about the products that I talked about. If you love them, you agree with me, as well as something that was the most underwhelming for you, because I feel like there was just
There was a lot of underwhelming makeup released in 2020. It was kind of a crapshoot. But thank you guys so much for watching. I love you, and as always, keep it real. Mwah!